So what we plan to do in this short part of our presentation is kind of give you an overview of the field of character education writ large, definitions, a little sampling of the research, and connections to state and national policy. So to start with the definitions, Marvin Berkowitz was at Marquette for many years and is known locally as one of the founders of Comedy Sports, so you might know his name. But in 2013, he and Bustamante gave this definition, which I think is quite good. Character education is fundamentally about how schools can leverage psychological principles and strategies to nurture the positive development of youth. Because that's what we care about, that the youth are having opportunities to learn to be good people. Building on that, Davidson and Lacona break out, and we'll talk about this several times during the PowerPoint. There's moral character, which is good behavior, living like a good person. But then there's also performance character, which we care about in schools, and that's taking responsibility for your work as a student, to be a responsible learner and really striving for excellence. So it's both aspects, and the one helps the other, as we'll see in the research. Now, a new term, social-emotional learning, has come about. And there's a collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning called CASEL. And if you read through this definition, it's really aspects of mental health. So it reinforces what Berkowitz said about its good psychological principles and strategies. Kids knowing how to address problems and not just respond angrily or with their fists to the first thing that happens. Bob's going to jump in here whenever he wants to. So.
Well, go ahead with the
Okay.
research. And then
All right, we'll get to the research. So what does the research say? A 2006 study really made a tight link between quality character education programs and academic achievement. And we've seen this in some of the schools in the area and in St. Louis, where one of our programs originated that we now have in Milwaukee. And another study showed reducing school violence, the suspensions, the referrals, whatever it might be, and increasing attendance. So the three outcomes that you typically see: increased academics, reduced disciplinary referrals, and increased attendance.
And I'm going to talk a little bit throughout the presentation about a study that 4 other retirees from UWM and I have conducted on 5 of the charter schools that UWM authorizes. And the findings there are striking, is the best way to say it. When you look at K-8 schools in the city of Milwaukee, of the top 10, 7 of them are charter schools. And of those that have a significant minority enrollment, 70% or above, 5 of those are UWM charter schools. And in each case, they have two pillars. And the Milwaukee College Prep, which was the one I got to study, says knowledge plus character leads the way to college and beyond. And it's those two that they emphasize almost equally throughout all their discussion. And when you look at the test scores and see that they're competing, when I was with the Office of Charter Schools, the very last year, Milwaukee College Prep was beating 11 of the 16 Milwaukee suburban districts with 99% African American and 78% poverty.
Other research shows that there's a measurable impact on academic achievement for focusing on social-emotional learning. Now, social-emotional learning and character go hand in hand, but this research was done on looking at specific social-emotional learning programs. If you could have an 11% gain in your percentile scores in a school, that would be a significant gain. And that's across a meta-analysis of many studies. That's the typical gain when you are attending to students' ability to handle their emotions, to work effectively with others, to control their anger, to work on caring and empathy for each other.
Go to the next one.
Okay.
When you're looking at on this research study, and it summarizes some of the same things we found. First of all, classrooms with few, if any, disruptions, where the lesson goes along quickly. as a result, really improved test scores, greater civility and teamwork among children and faculty at a school. And I think that last is something I can't emphasize enough. In these schools that we studied, it was not only the children who were taking the character education lessons to heart, but the faculty and how they worked with each other, how they talked to each other, how they brought up ideas and put forward new ways of improving the school. And it gets to the point where, now these are K-8 schools, but where there's almost no violence at all. And I had a unique little story, I guess. A few years ago, you might have remembered that coming back from Summerfest, a group of African-American kids came to that one gas station and went in and stole stuff and really became a menace. And the next week I was at Milwaukee College Prep, and one of the boys said, if we had been there, it wouldn't have happened.
They would take responsibility for stopping.
We would have taken responsibility and said, this is not right. And it's that kind of thing when you bring it not only in the school, but also in how they live their daily lives, that changes a lot of different things.
Now, Elaine is going to address the point you made about the adults are critically important, because that's one of the key 11 principles of character education. And I want to just let you know that Ed Dunkelblau, this researcher, is going to be at the Character Ed Conference this summer, which is sponsored by South Milwaukee Schools and supported by Alverno. It'll be at Alverno. And this is the first of 3 slides of some of his findings. So this relates to success in the classroom. The second, success in the school. School-wide, when you really focus on social-emotional learning, another name for character education, then you get these outcomes, which are typical, as we said earlier. You improve the school climate. Students feel more like they belong and have a connection to the school. Bullying becomes less an issue, more attendance, fewer suspensions, less at-risk behavior, fewer disciplinary referrals. So it fits in with your story from before.
And that connection to the school is something which is exceedingly important. In interviewing students, they would tell me, this is my school. This isn't the school I happen to be going to. This is my school. And that changes their whole outlook when they start to own the school.
And then you get remarks like, we don't do that here,
Yes.
to students who come in from other schools. You know, we have a sense of place here.
Another little story on that, I was at the Young Leaders Academy on 13th and North, just observing one day, and there were 2 4th graders that decided they were going to have fun and run down the hall and push and shove a little bit. They didn't get nabbed by teachers, they got nabbed by 2 8th graders who said, what do you think you're doing? We're YLA, we don't do that here. If you can't behave as you should, you need to leave.
And of course, all of this is focused on success later in life. We don't encourage social-emotional learning and character education just to be in school. It's really helping kids become the persons they're going to be. And so again, Dunkelblau's research shows the adults who have had good character education, good social-emotional learning, will have more empathy and tolerance that they carry all the way through their life. And if you look at the rest of the topics on this slide, these are things we really care about in the civic community, in the workplace, and with parents. So the payoff is far more important than a temporary test score. It's really the kind of people that we hope to have in our society.
And there have been some studies on the programs that are meant to bring adults who haven't done too well in school into the job area. And by and large, they don't work. The youth training programs throughout the United States are somewhat of a failure. Research was done to find out then, well, why is that? And the answer is they don't have these soft skills. And the question then is, where do they learn them? They learn them early in their life, between 3 and 8 years old.
The second part of this is to talk about connection to state policy. There's a lot about academic testing on the DPI website, but if you go to the WINSS Successful School Guide, you'll also find that we have in Wisconsin Standards of the Heart, which encourage schools to attend to character and social-emotional learning. And the piece in this slide that I want to highlight, again, goes to what Elaine's going to be talking about. You really have to plan for this to happen. It doesn't happen magically. And schools that pay attention to really building the systems that help students develop that sense of, we don't do that here, that sense of, I want to be proud of my work and proud of my behavior, really work toward that in the planning. And it's not a program. We like to say it's not another thing on the plate. It is the plate. It's the basis for what we're doing. And Wisconsin also has a positive behavior intervention and support network that the state mandates, but it's also focused on the same aspects that we are promoting in WCEP, that you have a responsive system, a culturally responsive, multi-level system of support that helps students develop what we talked about before, the moral character, the behavioral piece, and the performance character, the academic piece. So you're looking at the whole child, the person who is a good human being and the person who is an academically responsible citizen of the school. And then moving to national policy, the Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium Model Standards, which were revised in 2011, focus in several places. I was co-chair of the group that did that revision. But in Standard 3, which is about creating school environments, it's really very clearly focused on these kinds of issues, as you'll see here. And the bottom part of that, again, points to moral character and performance character. We want our teachers to be able to help students develop shared values and expectations for respectful interaction. If you treat others respectfully, that goes a long way to building this kind of culture we're talking about. But then also rigorous academic discussions and individual and group academic responsibility. So learning how to work toward quality work.
And that's important. Another little saying from one of the charter schools is that the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. And so the idea, the emphasis that you've got to learn to work hard if you're going to succeed. And that's all, again, tied right into the character ed.
And two other national organizations that address these kinds of issues. The first is the National School Climate Center. And again, if you look at their literature, it's the same sort of issues, the same sort of questions. So there are many, many organizations working toward this same thing. We all have different words and language, but you can key into the same issues. Here they're focusing on a sustainable, positive school climate that fosters youth development and learning. And they're making the link then to society and how we prepare students to be active citizens and contributors to society. And the National School Boards Association has a school climate survey that gets at some of the same things. And these are all tools that schools can use.